Critics have made similar complaints about Orwell's emotional responses to the fighting in Spain, as he records them in Homage to Catalonia, to his remoteness and detachment from his comrades in arms, to his prejudice and ignorance when it comes to the Spanish people, to his British upper-class arrogance and chauvinism. Such critics are right in detecting Orwell's dedication to recording British lower upper middle class angst. But they're wrong, I think, in suggesting that this dimension of his work is at odds with his commitment to fighting poverty or fascism. In depicting the spiritual writhings of his speakers, Orwell is deploying the modernist device of limited point of view. That is, he is deliberately crafting a center of consciousness that is confused, self-deceived, and distanced from others by its own acculturation. Such a device defines the psychological novels of modernism, Conrad, Joyce, Henry Miller, and its war memoirs, Sassoon, Aldington, Graves, London, and it's essential to the technique of modernist ethnography in the tradition of Malinowski. Orwell is quite explicit about the point of the device, which is to confront the prejudice that lurks within us and that prevents us from empathizing with other human beings. Orwell knows that it has been de rigueur in progressive circles to deny that such a barrier exists. I'm not a snob, he points out in Way to Hear, is nowadays a kind of universal credo. But in his opinion, the barriers separating the lower upper middle class spectator from the oppressed subject aren't so easily penetrated. The objective narratives of socialist realism and documentary are examples of false consciousness, while the limited narratives of modernism do the necessary work of revealing what are, in effect, obstacles to solidarity. To get rid of class distinctions, he insists, you've got to start by showing how one class appears when seen through the eyes of another. You've got to write sincerely, as if you were looking out from inside the whale. So here the hesitations of a J. Alfred Prufrock fuse with those of the indulged middle-class, upper-class 18-year-old, so soft by comparison with his working-class counterpart that Joseph Masson reminded us of yesterday. Orwell shared Conrad's view that such stories, while foregrounding what defied human beings, may produce another kind of solidarity between writer and reader. Orwell praises Joyce for the way he makes you feel he knows all about you, though he's never heard your name. The effect of a book like Ulysses is to break down, at any rate momentarily, the solitude in which the human being lives. So the modernist writer achieves solidarity by the connection that he makes between his text and the reader, while exposing the failure of solidarity in other respects. Orwell's experiments with limited point of view are just one facet of his larger modernist concern with sincerity, or with the congruence between avowal and actual feeling, as his great champion Lionel Trilling once defined it. Sincerity is a cherished criterion for modernist writers, from Conrad to Eliot, Forster to G, and we often hear Orwell invoking it. In the essay Inside the Whale, he expresses nostalgia for writing that is emotionally sincere, the kind that offers no sermons, merely the subjective truth. In The Prevention of Literature, he regrets that the Spanish Civil War, while an immensely moving experience for many writers, was not an experience about which they could write sincerely. He is dubious about formulaic Spanish Civil War memoirs, but he has time for the sickening autobiography of Salvador Dali, with its references to necrophilia and other dark desires, because it is at least sincere. Autobiography is only to be trusted, he observes, when it reveals something distasteful. Orwell's commitment to sincerity in writing, however, goes beyond advocating that a writer come clean about offensive or regressive attitudes. It also drives some of his most famous statements about diction and style, tenets that are strikingly similar to those in the early poetic manifestos of Anglo-American modernism. And this is where your handout comes in. Here we may turn to Politics in the English Language, a document we commonly assign in expository writing classes in North America with the goal of teaching students how to write clearly. The great enemy of clear language, Orwell says in the essay, is insincerity. The essay's program seems straightforward enough, but interestingly, it has drawn fire from voices on the political left. At the height of the theory wars in the American Academy in the 1990s, for example, some objected to its call to eliminate jargon on the grounds that it implicitly discouraged social critique. Invoking Theodor Adorno, the critic James Miller declared that what progressive critical writing requires is modernist complexity, not Orwell's demotic simplicity. The essay's instructions to cut down our abstract vocabulary seemed to Miller suspiciously close to the party's efforts in Oceania to eliminate heretical thought by reducing the number of words. In my reading, Orwell's instructions in Politics in the English Language actually do stand to assist the project of political resistance. And we can appreciate this by looking more deeply into their roots in literary modernism. It's plausible, I think, that he models his tenets on those in the manifestos, the poetic manifestos of T. Hume, T.S. Eliot, and Ezra Pound. So the following instructions from Politics in the English Language, for example: never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech which you are used to seeing in print. Never use a long word where a short one will do. If it's possible to cut a word out, always cut it out. Never use the passive where you can use the active. And break any of these rules sooner than say anything outright barbarous. Read uncannily, like Pounds, a few don'ts for religious poets. Use no superfluous word, no adjective which does not reveal something. Don't use an expression such as dim lands of peace, it dulls the image. Go in fear of abstractions. Do not retell in mediocre verse what has already been done in good prose. Use either no ornament or good ornament. Orwell's calls to eliminate dying metaphors are especially reminiscent of the tenets in Hume's Notes on Language and Style. And I've just reproduced a few of those. Dead analogies, new phrases made in poetry, tested, and then employed in prose. Prose is a museum where all the old weapons of poetry are kept. When we look more deeply into the contexts for all of these tenets, we see that they spring in all cases from a commitment to writing sincerely. And this means something quite specific to the modernist writers, including Orwell. The task of giving voice to what Henri Bergson called the fundamental self, or William James, the stream of consciousness.